This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Wednesday Late Late Show with me, Toby Doncaster. Tonight, we look at collaborating with parents, guardians, and carers. How can we make it effective with the learners in FE?
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to the show. I've been away for a while. It's been a busy time over at the college where I work. But I've just had quite an interesting event, basically a parents' evening. And even though I've had 24 years experience in a further education setting, working with parents and guardians and carers, I still find it a bit interesting. In fact, I would say exciting working with parents, especially when, you see them bring in a 16-year-old young adult into the into the common room, and the parents looking all anxious. How's my boy or girl getting on? And there's me, sort of almost like a judge. I'm looking at the parents as well. They're not very much older than, they must have been out of school for 10 or maybe 15 years. I'm sure the wounds are still fresh, so to speak. But there you are. They're there with me, listening intently to what I have to say. And I'm thinking, do you know what? I'd really like to spend more time with you to help you, give the best possible opportunity to your child, in effect. Whether you're a guardian, a parent, or a carer, there is that sort of sense of parental responsibility. But things are changing in that, the child is 16, 17, 18, maybe even 19 or 20. They're a young adult. They are trying to find out things for themselves. They're self-searching, if you like, about what it means to be an adult while still under parental control, and probably, sort of fighting against that a little bit. As I said, that's one side of the coin. On the other hand, today, for example, when I had this parents' evening, I had parents who were so bursting with pride when I told them, the positive news about how their charge was getting on in GCSE English. So really, we're looking at, how we can drive the success of our young people, how teachers can collaborate with parents, guardians, and carers to help 16 to 18-year-olds thrive. And as I said, on one hand, they're chaffing at the bit. They want to, prove their independence. But on the other hand, they still need us, teachers, educators, as well as, parents and guardians to help guide them along. Now, what we do know is that this age group is at a critical stage. They're balancing their newfound independence with the responsibilities of exams, further education, or maybe even preparing for the workforce. And, in a further education college, we have all three. So we could be helping them gain further employment, though they don't even understand what that means, in the sense of, what it means to have a job and what does it mean to be responsible, be resilient, and stay motivated even when things are going tough. Um, some of our students, they're looking to go on to apprenticeships, so that's even more responsibility, and they might not necessarily have GCSE English and maths, but we're there to help support them achieve this. So really what we need to do is to collaborate, not just with the parents, I'm thinking, but also with the students, help them to understand the reality of what it means to be a 16 to 18-year-old, and at the same time sort of gain the trust and the support of the parent in helping them meet these challenges and demands. So think about why collaboration matters. you, Students are navigating a mix of academic pressures as well as personal growth. So they're figuring out who they are and what they want from life. For some, it's an exciting time, but for a lot of the students that I work with, it can be quite overwhelming. And they need to they need to feel reassured that there is support, not just from their parents or guardians, but also from me, their teacher, that, I'm on their side. And in the first few weeks, when I meet new students, this is exactly what I say to them. I actually say, look, I'm on your side here. I do want you to succeed, and I really want you to do well in your course. You know, um, we need to set some ground rules, but also we need to think about what you need to do in order to be able to thrive and succeed. And some of the lessons that you might have learnt at school, you may have thought don't really matter, but they do matter at the moment. Now, research has shown that when teachers and parents work together, students are more likely to succeed. Okay. It takes a village to raise a young adult. If I bang the drum about learner attendance and punctuality, doing their homework, doing their coursework, doing their classwork for that matter, it doesn't work as effectively unless I can get parents on board. And that does mean explaining to them, the sort of platforms that we use in further education to help support learners. So we've got things like Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams that you might be using. We've got there are various artificial intelligence platforms now that we can use to help students to sort of revise their English and maths and their science and so on. There's the simple email and the telephone call that we can use to communicate with the parent to let them know what's going on. Of course, I personally think that parents, they have a lot of things to deal with. They've got to work, they've got to support their family, they've got to cook, clean, shop, do all the rest of that. And at the same time, they're thinking, hold on, surely, my 16-year-old or my 17-year-old is old enough to do this on their own. Why do they need my help? And I think the answer to that is that they do need help because they need reminding. It's almost what I've experienced in college is that my students frequently forget what they're supposed to be doing, and they need reminding constantly. And they need to be shown how to act as an adult learner in this case, how to take responsibility for their learning, whether it's to keep a diary or to use an electronic version of a diary to remind themselves of things that they have to do, to keep a calendar, to be aware of deadlines. There's a lot of things there which I can't do for them. So it helps to have the parents say to them, what's your study plan for this week? What are your SMART targets that have been set for you? So I'm interested in what you have to say. And you could always call in or, sending a message, how do you work with 16 to 19-year-olds, and how do you gain collaboration with your parents? So do send in a message, okay, or do ask to call in, and we can have a conversation about it. Now, the foundation of any successful partnership is trust. So that's the next thing I wanted to think about. And there needs to be an element of trust, not just with the learner, but also with the parents. And in tonight's parental evening that we had, that really got me thinking, because the parents were sort of sitting with me and taking in what I had to say, trusting what I had to say. And it was quite interesting, because there would be some students, I'd say, oh, yes, they're doing really well. They're quite keen with their English. They're doing some sterling pieces of written work. And the parent would look at me and say, are you talking about my child? Because that's not what they were like when they were at school. That's not what they were like in the last year. And I said, no, but they have worked hard. They've developed. And I go, look, here, I bring them the evidence. I show them the writing, and I say, look, this is what they've actually produced. And, these are the grades that I'm predicting for them at the moment. And the parents are blown away. But I think this is something that a lot of parents don't expect. They don't expect praise from teachers. And it could possibly be that when they were in education themselves, they didn't get that sort of support from the teachers. So it's almost like, multi-generational, if you like. In previous generations, you didn't get any sort of support from people, so therefore you're not going to get that. You don't expect that support for your own offspring, and it's quite sad. But really, it's more than just sharing grades. It's also about talking to them about how their charge is getting on in class, their strengths, what they need to do to improve their areas for growth, and also asking the parents as well, to get information about what's happening at home that might affect their learning. I had an interesting one today where the parents, I commented to the parent, I said, your child, frequently falls asleep in class. Is there something going on that we don't know about? He keeps complaining about being tired. And parents all looked at me and said, well, the problem is I can't take his phone away from him anymore. When I say it's time for bed, he goes to bed, but whether there's anything going on in the bedroom is another matter. So, but that was the first time that I felt a connection with a parent, and I was able to say, look, I'm concerned about, your child. What do you think? And the parent said, yeah, well, actually, I might have to do something about this. But also, we want to hear about whether, as I said, they're 16 to 18. So there's a chance that they could they might have a part-time job, or, they're facing a personal challenge, or maybe even a recent achievement that we can sort of celebrate together.
Parentkind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school-parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Hey educators, ready to kickstart 2025 with world-class inspiration? Then don't miss Bet UK, happening January 22nd to 24th in London. Get fired up in our high-energy arena hosted by Laura McInerney, with an incredible lineup. Hear from racing driver and inclusion advocate Nicholas Hamilton, and the poetic power duo Michael Rosen and Christian Foley. Plus, don't miss the legendary Stephen Fry discuss the human approach to AI. Explore hundreds of hours of unmissable content, the latest edtech, and free CPD opportunities to supercharge your skills. All for free. So why wait? Head to betshow.com and book your ticket now. Let's make 2025 your best year yet.
So, thinking about working with parents, we've already thought about collaboration, the idea of building trust. The next thing I wanted to talk about was really how we can support independence in our 16 to 18-year-olds while at the same time still staying involved. And that could be a little bit tricky. I remember, I remember being 15 and 16, and it was quite I felt intimidated actually when people started showing an interest. And it was difficult to understand that, what is actually happening is that they are showing concern and support for what I'm trying to achieve. Now, it doesn't mean, just because, 16 to 18-year-olds want to be independent, doesn't mean that we can't be involved. But it is about asking how they're getting on. And I actually experienced a strange phenomenon, if I could call it that, in my classrooms. So my students produce GCSE English written work. And literally the next day, when I see them, they straight away say, did you read what I wrote? What did you think about it? And it's a curious balancing act, because what they don't want me to do is to say, oh, yes, it was very good. By the way, you made these sort of mistakes. And by the way, you could do this and this and this to improve. They want me to give them a personal opinion about how well they did. And I have a feeling this is something which a lot of young people don't get, which is validation from somebody possibly that they look up to. So what is the next step? The next step is, when students do a good piece of work, or even, produce something that's noteworthy, it's time to contact the parent or carer or guardian and say, look, I tell you what's happened today, and I'm quite excited about it. Your son or daughter has done this. And it's quite a powerful moment, because, as I was saying previously, parents very rarely hear praise. There's most likely to be, you've done very well, here's a couple of sentences about that. And then the rest of the praise sandwich is all about how the child can develop further. And that is a little bit off-putting, I think. I think we want to hear more about how well they're doing, and also thinking about it, the opportunities that the young person could have based on what they've already achieved. And that takes a little bit of, shall we say, forethought, insight, if you like, as to how well the child is doing and what they can be achieving next. So it needs a bit of being a guide. So instead of asking, instead of saying to them, have you done your homework? As I was saying previously, you could say, I really appreciated the work that you did last week. What have you got to show me this time? Okay. It adds some sort of validation to what they're doing, and it makes them want to impress you further. I have one student that unfortunately his parents did arrive today, and I didn't get a chance to meet them. And I remember sort of like 2 months ago, he produced a piece of writing that was literally half a page, half an A4. And I said, this is really creative. I could see you've put a lot of forethought into it. A lot of planning has gone into it. It's quite impressive. He said, did you like it? I said, yeah, I did. Yeah, it's really good. So, gentle listener, I'm happy to say that this week he produced a 4 A4 sheets of writing, 4 sides. And, he had dialogue, he had characterization, he had zombies, he had a gunfight, he had all sorts of things going on in his story. But the thing was, he went from half a page and saying to me, I'm not very good at writing, to I produced this. What do you think about it? And impressing the socks off me. And yes, I made a mental note. I've got to contact his parents tomorrow and say, look, this is what he's done. And this is the thing. I think as teachers, we spend a lot of time chasing parents to say, your son or daughter is not attending or is not being on time or doesn't have equipment, but we don't spend enough time saying what they're doing well and mentioning that, by the way, did you know that they've got work to do as well that they could be doing at home? They've got other things that they could be focusing on in order to develop their talents and skills, because they are talented and skilled. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is how we can address challenges together. So we've looked at, collaboration. We've looked at how we can encourage positivity, positive work, and, how we can offer validation as teachers. So this time we're looking at what happens when things go wrong. And of course, it's not always smooth sailing. And when challenges do arise, whether it's academic or, the student is starting to lag, lose motivation, or even personal issues, this is where collaboration with the parent is even more important. So instead of saying, what's wrong, I always say, is there something bothering you? And it's quite interesting. I have one student at the moment who always produces good pieces of work. And this week came into class and said, I'm feeling really tired. I've got a headache. I can't really focus. I can't really concentrate. And I said, well, what happened? Why are you like this? And he said, I had something to deal with at home, and my parents took me out late night, and I didn't get home till midnight, and I didn't get to bed till 2:00 in the morning. And I said, well, your parents shouldn't be doing that on a school night. Do you want me to talk to them? And he was quite alarmed. He said, no, I don't want you to do that. I said, well, maybe I need to ask them if there's anything that we can do to help. And he was happy to talk to me about it, but he didn't want me to talk to his parents about it, which was quite a strange thing. And I don't know how to deal with that. So, as I've been saying, if you've got any suggestions about how to deal with challenges, I'm more than happy to hear them. But I have now reached a point where when attendance starts to lag, the first thing I do is I contact the parent and ask them, is anything the matter? Is there anything we can do to help? What can we do to support your son or daughter in their studies? And it's not about blaming. It's about asking, how can we support? And as I was saying earlier, in this case, there are, a lot of edtech platforms that we could be using that allow, students to access their work at home. They can even, use webcams to be in the classroom while they're off sick. But also there's the question of what happens when they don't produce their work. And it could well be that they're overwhelmed by what they've been given. They can't sort of visualize how to get through with the issue. Or maybe they're dealing with issues outside of what's happening in the college. And the question I've got is whether we can offer any sort of flexibility. For example, we can extend their deadlines, or we can offer tailored support. Now, what's really nice about the college that I work at, we've got additional learner support, for example, where students outside of their class time can go in for one-to-one support. And it could well be that this is the opportunity for them, to talk to parents, to address sort of the importance of attending and working with teachers and educators to identify barriers.
Parentkind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school-parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out! Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading!
Hey educators, ready to kickstart 2025 with world-class inspiration? Then don't miss Bet UK, happening January 22nd to 24th in London. Get fired up in our high-energy arena hosted by Laura McInerney, with an incredible lineup. Hear from racing driver and inclusion advocate Nicholas Hamilton, and the poetic power duo Michael Rosen and Christian Foley. Plus, don't miss the legendary Stephen Fry discuss the human approach to AI. Explore hundreds of hours of unmissable content, the latest edtech, and free CPD opportunities to supercharge your skills. All for free, so why wait? Head to betshow.com and book your ticket now. Let's make 2025 your best year yet.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The BBC Norfolk news website focuses on the national issue of school attendance. The report states that persistent absence from schools is higher in Norfolk than the national average. At secondary school level, the Norfolk total is at 38.1%, compared to the national average of 28.3%. And for primary schools, it is 18.9%, compared to 17.2%. The BBC sat in on hearings at magistrates' courts to hear the human stories behind the national issue. One parent told magistrates she was frightened of her son and had no control over him, whilst another said issues with the child using school toilets had led to school refusal. One family explained that their own ill health had affected their ability to take primary-age pupils to school, and restrictive shift patterns at work had made it even more difficult. Representatives from the local authority made comments after the hearings, reminding of the importance of ensuring a child's attendance to school, and it's as high as possible, as many times as possible. It pointed to government guidance which schools must follow to ensure regular attendance, with a focus on support to remove barriers to attendance overall. According to the TES magazine, private schools lose their GCSE results edge after adjustments for students' backgrounds. Researchers say state school students perform better in English, maths and science, but private schools still perform better in creative arts subjects. Researchers from UCL say the findings could have implications for parents deciding on the best education for their child, and raise questions about the relative strength of creative education in state schools. The analysis is based on GCSE results from state and independent schools from the 2016 to 17 cohort. The data from the UK Millennium Cohort study follows the lives of 19,000 young people born across all 4 home nations in 2000 to 2002. Before adjusting, private school students achieved 4/5 of a grade higher across all GCSE subjects, assuming 8 were studied. Once socioeconomic status was accounted for, the researchers said this difference was statistically indistinguishable from 0. But when just the core subjects were considered, state schools had the edge, achieving on average 2/3 of a grade higher in maths, 2/5 of a grade higher in science, and a slight advantage in English after all of the adjustments. Professor Jake Anders said it has been long assumed that the private sector outperforms the state, and that over the past 2 decades, state schools have increased their focus on core subjects. Full details can be found in the TES magazine online. Schools Week covers a story on school leader stress after Education Support released its annual Teacher Wellbeing Index. Although it reported that the overall well-being score of teachers and leaders had improved slightly, Chief Executive Sinead McBratey warned disturbingly high rates of stress, anxiety and burnout continue to affect staff, exacerbated by pupil and parent behaviours and a lack of support outside of school for children and young people. The article lists 7 issues, with 78% of teachers reported as being stressed, although there was a drop from 39% to 35% in staff reporting a mental health issue. On a positive note, the proportion of staff who said they considered their organisation's culture had a negative effect on their well-being fell from 55% to 50%, and 27% of staff now experience a culture which is positive for their well-being, up from 22% last year. Full details can be found in Schools Week on their online article. The Guardian covers claims that schools and colleges in England are failing in their legal duty to prevent and address racism. Campaigners are calling for the national curriculum in England to include an explicit anti-racism focus, with Black history as a compulsory subject. In a letter to the Prime Minister, a group of leaders from several organisations have warned that racism is holding all young people back, and calls for urgent action to address the impacts of a growing crisis. The letter goes on to say that the planned review of the national curriculum offers a perfect opportunity to embed diverse, anti-racist content. Recommendations in the letter include ensuring a whole school approach to tackling racism be implemented, the DFE to treat racism as a safeguarding issue, and for anti-racism guidance to be published for all schools and colleges. The organisations signing up to the letter include the Diana Award, Everyday Racism, and the African Caribbean Education Network, among others. A Department for Education spokesperson said, "Racism and discrimination have absolutely no place in our schools, and we have launched an independent curriculum and assessment review aimed at delivering a curriculum that reflects the diversities of our society." Finally, several parts of the UK were affected by the weather in recent days. More than 100 schools across the Scottish Highlands, 30 in North Wales, and almost 200 in Devon and Cornwall shut due to snow. Many schools affected, however, were able to continue teaching pupils, as online learning, developed during the pandemic, was activated for the majority of pupils. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
And we're back again. talking about parents, collaborating with parents, guardians, and carers in order to get the most effective, how do we say this now? In order to help, charges thrive. And I was just thinking, we've talked about building collaboration, building that sort of sense of trust, using dollops of praise, which most parents are probably not used to, fostering independence, encouraging students to take responsibility for their learning, helping them to set things like timetables, diaries, keeping calendars, journals, bearing in mind things like deadlines. But there was something that we were just hearing about in the news just now, which was about GCSE grades. And that got me thinking, we, as a college, we do well, with attendance, not so much with punctuality, but we can blame the trains for that. But I was thinking, when it comes to the end of year exams, we do have a bit of a problem calling people in. And though the attendance for exams is good, I do wonder, though, whether people are getting stressed and, whether they are able to handle exam stress. And what we do, or what I do rather, is I spend time talking about mindfulness, talking about meditation, teaching students, how to deal with, that sort of stress, that sort of panic moment. And I say, actually, everybody has a panic moment. The heart starts beating faster and you have to sort of remind yourself to breathe. And I was just wondering, would it be worthwhile talking to parents about this and actually, gaining a holistic picture of what their child is like, what their sort of study program has been like so far, what their study journey through school, through primary and secondary, through high school has been like. What do they like? What sort of successes do they like? So it's really got me thinking, that going back to that parents' evening that I had today, I'm not too sure if it was that effective, because really all that's happened, in some cases, this might be the first time I've met the parent. All I've been able to say is, oh yeah, this is how well he's done. This is what she could do to improve. This is the sort of support that we offer. I'm giving you a lot of information there. I don't even know if you've taken any of it away. I don't even know if I'm building a relationship with you, a relationship that's good enough to support your child. I don't know. It's something to think about. And, perhaps we need to be spending a bit more time being in touch with parents, whether it's a phone call or an email, early and often, to let them know how their charges are getting on and sharing any concerns that you might have. Finally, I did say that, praise is important. And I think that really that's really what I want to end on, is the fact that we need to celebrate them more and more often. Now, we've just had an award ceremony at our college, which I thought was quite interesting, because it was, from what I saw of the emails, it was almost like pulling teeth. Can you think of a student who you would like to recommend for an award? And it was like, no, not really. Why not? When you think about education and post-16 education, though it's compulsory, I don't think there's enough sort of effort, if you like, spent into helping students to attend. And I think celebrating success is one way of doing that, and doing it on a regular basis. So, for example, what we do with our 14 to 16-year-old provision at our college is every week we ensure that on the Friday we gather an assembly and say, oh, by the way, so-and-so has done really well in science or history, or, so-and-so should be applauded because they made sure that they came in on time every day for the whole week. We celebrate those small wins, and what we're telling our students is that these small wins are important. So I seem to have moved away from, collaborating with parents to thinking about small wins and thinking about how we can make a positive environment for learners to want to come to college, to want to be in college, and to want to do well in college. We, as a college, we organize events. So there's plenty of extracurricular events that students can take part in, so they can achieve in that way as well. And there's a curious one, which I haven't been able to organize recently, which is a talent contest. We did one last December for the 14 to 16 cohort, but not for the 16 to 19 or for the adults to come to college and show us what else they can do. So I think celebrating small wins and actually, in a way, sort of advertising them and promoting them and making it clear that, we value everything that our students can bring to the college promotes a sort of positive environment. And in a way, it's something that parents can be proud of, and they can view our college in a positive light. So going right back to the beginning, when I said most parents probably don't have a positive experience of education. Thinking about the number of parents that turned up for this evening, or thinking about the phone calls that I make and the way that parents respond when I make a phone call, even though it may be a positive one. I think as education establishments, particularly in secondary and in further education, we need to make it a much more positive experience. And I think I'm going to end on that. Make it a positive experience for everybody, not just the learner, but also for the parent and guardian.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.